Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back. It's another Red Pill Religion podcast, Red Pill Religion, where amongst the things we say are that men's rights are human rights. And if we need feminism, then we need some sort of men's advocacy too. Men's rights activity or something else. If you like the kind of work we do, remember we cover a broad range of red pill issues here. We're not afraid to talk about the supernatural, the paranormal, the unknown. We're not afraid to talk about politics. We are not afraid to talk about religion. Those are all important topics. So if you like the kind of work we do here on Red Pill Religion, please remember to find us on redpillreligion.com. Redpillreligion.com, where every day in these days of social media censorship, we are still posting new material every day. We are still could use help with improving the site, monetizing and such, but we're doing our best we can as we can. Please, we appreciate your donations through Bitcoin and PayPal, especially those of you making recurring donations. Those of you, or one time is good. Those of you who are still hanging on Patreon, we appreciate you, and we do hope to open up on Subscribestar if Subscribestar ever gets off the ground. So otherwise, please here on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit that alarm bell if you would, so you get notifications. Help us raise our subscriber count. We are on our third channel, our third restart of the channel, due to censorship, harassment, and other problems. Although our old backup channel is still there, at least for now, and we may be repurposing it for other things. In any case, good to see you all. Now, tonight we have with us Jim Wilcox, also known sometimes as Reverend Spinnaker. Say hi, Jim. Hello, you have to unmute yourself. All right, Jim, while you're figuring out how to unmute yourself, Buckley, also known as Mr. Geocon. How's it going, Mr. Buckley?
Yes. My name is the Ghost of Buckley. For those of you who are familiar with me, I have been on several live streams in the past with Red Pill Religion. I've been a proud member since 2017, and I've recently changed my name to Mr. Geocon, who is you can find me on at Twitter at Mr._Geocon, and my YouTube channel is called the Geoconservative.
Awesome. Good to hear from you. Good to see you again. I know you've recently graduated college, and I think congratulations are in order for that. Jim, have you figured out how to unmute yourself yet? You float your mouse at the top of the screen and hit unmute. You may have to leave the stream and rejoin if you can't figure it out. So not sure how to help otherwise. So tonight, otherwise, your mouse and your keyboard are really loud.
Am I back on?
Yes, you're back on.
How you doing tonight, Mr. Wilcox, also known as Rev Spinnaker?
There we go. I'm doing just fine. I don't know how I did that, but we're back.
Not literally a reverend. It's just an irreverent title we
Exactly.
use.
And I started calling myself Rev Spinnaker, and it turns out it's a nautical term. So that's why I thought we'll just leave it that way then. Originally, it was going to be Reverend Spinnaker, but abbreviated. But then when I found out it was a nautical term, I just said I like that better.
A Rev Spinnaker? Interesting.
Rev Spinnaker, I don't know what it means, but it must have something to do with the Spinnaker sail on a sailboat.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's why it stayed that way with a lowercase.
Well, okay. So in any case, tonight we are here to talk about. And by the way, guys, please get in the habit of muting yourself when you're not talking, okay? Because you're both making a lot of background noise. Obviously, what a whole lot of people are talking about today, we might as well start talking about the hideous Gillette advertisement, which is really just misandrist, anti-male hate propaganda rendered under the guise of making men better. And I'm not even going to go through a description of the whole thing. Y'all can see it. We linked it in the low bar. We'll have it linked on the blog. It's not that any one particular part of the message is necessarily wrong. It's the lecturing, the lopsidedness, the presumption of male guilt and female innocence, and that children are in danger from men. It's a whole mentality.
Well, it's the litany of everything, really. When you get right down to it, it's street harassment where one guy stopping the other. You know, they get to the bystander part of it where you're supposed to step in. Well, you know, where is the stepping in for anything that has anything to do with abuse of women? And you know me.
I would agree. I mean, I think Paul Joseph Watson hit the nail on the head when he asked, are products that sell to women going to start lecturing them about toxic femininity? Of course not.
No.
You know what? If there were such ads for women at this point, it would not just be fair game. It would actually maybe be helpful, because in the culture, women have been fed this message. We've all been fed this message that violence and abuse are a male problem. And in reality, and it's one of the things we're going to get into, child abuse in particularly is mostly a women's issue. And as in, women perpetrate most of it.
Yes.
And I'm going to repeat that out loud again for any feminists listening. Women perpetrate most child abuse to a considerable degree, including far more smart.
40% acting on their own, 40% acting on their own, 60%, another 20% with their significant other. Now, I'm not sure if that's with the husband or I think that's with the husband, actually. God, I have to get back onto that. But
okay, no, your numbers sound right. It winds up being something like 40% on their own, and
and 60% with a husband, I think, and then like 80% though. They're involved with all of it, is what it boils down to.
Yes, at every level, and the cultural shift to try to say that they're not is garbage. But people who say that women have a problem here, they get silenced, mocked, and shunned. But that would be the really brave thing to do, is start talking about the problem.
That's because men are defensive about it. That's the notion of all of this stuff, is to make men defensive. Think about it. All of these things that have happened recently, Desmond, you know, these poor kids, though, that's even a separate issue on its own. It's child abuse on Good Morning America. That's almost a separate issue than like the American Psychological Association.
Well, we're going to get over to that soon, but we'll talk about
these things specifically make men defensive. And men in Guyville, we have a saying: the best defense is a good offense. That's why we have to go on the offensive and attack. Say, hey, what about, not just what about, you know, because you have whataboutism, is say, okay, fine. That's why, you know, as we were talking earlier, I call myself a masculist, because, hey, fine. But as far as a masculist is concerned, all of the problems are the fault of bad mothering, which I call pathological malnurturing. The universal denial of it, and the universal sexual expectations of the mercenary sexual expectations of the white vagina people. And just lay it right back on them. Like, hey, no, you're awful. Your gender is the worst. But hey, we can fix you. You need us to make you better.
That's right. As women, you need us to improve as women.
Now, it's a masculinist world now, because we're going to crush the matriarchy. We're going to crush pathological malnurturing. You know, we're going to crush bad mothers. That's what we're going to do, because all of the evil in the world stems from bad mothering. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, let's put an ad up like that, and see how they like it. Well, you know, you're ranting a little, because that's not actually constructive, but it illustrates the point, doesn't it?
No, that's where it is constructive. It makes me feel good. Now, as a masculinist, I am in tune with my feminine side. So being in tune with my feminine side, I have a right to bitch. And when I feel like bitching, I'm going to pitch a wicked bitching. And hey, the better thing is there to bitch about other than...
Hey, you're expressing your emotions in a healthy way.
Exactly. This is exactly what women are looking for.
You will not be silenced. You will not be silenced.
I will not be silenced. As a matter of fact, I love to bitch. I love it, because it just makes me feel so in tune with my feminine side. So it must be good.
Hey, so in all seriousness, if we're talking about the Gillette commercial, there are I would recommend the video by Louis Laveau, Sons Need Fathers, which I think does a good job of deconstructing it. But he points out that the video basically has two main messages. One is that fathers are somehow useless or defective and interchangeable or otherwise just not important. And the other is that we need mommy to coddle all the boys out there and turn them so that they act more like girls. Because that's going to make everything better. We need more of mommy.
That's the message, basically. Especially with his attack on manhood, because it really is an attack on manhood. You can't call it anything other than that. And it's almost like they're getting too much mothering to begin with, because there's so many absent fathers.
Definitely.
And there's a lot of women who even take advantage of that, especially in divorce or whatever, and make a demon out of the father that they themselves kicked out of the home. I mean, of course, there's plenty of bad dads who just leave the home. Don't get me wrong, but for the most part, we know it statistically. It's mostly women leave men, not the other way around. And most single motherhood is totally a choice, and these things matter. This guy Louis Laveau looks actually pretty good. I've only just subscribed to him based on your recommendation, but we have linked his video in the low bar. And you're saying, Mr. Giocan, that really he does make this point that they're almost pathologically over-mothered, these people.
Oh yes, he goes as far as to say that he calls it coddling. Really, it's smothering, but he basically says that over coddling of men, not letting the fathers take the charge of raising their kids, is leading to mass school shooters or something like that. I think there's a lot of truth to that, because he spends the first few minutes going about how the importance of the father's touch when it comes to the father's approach to dealing with bullying and dealing with people who harass you. He basically says you have to stand up to the bully, and you have to stand up to the bully. And if you can't stand up to the bully, then then dad will take you out and teach you how to mix martial arts or boxing, and then you can stand up to the bully.
I think you've got a really good point there. I mean, and I do think a lot of this has to do with a generation of young men who've been raised without fathers, or and estranged from their fathers, or even taught to hate their fathers. While that, and now they're in their 20s and 30s, and maybe even the 40s, and as you know, they're victims of parental alienation or just plain not having fathers. And coddling is the wrong word, because first off, a lot of them will have just had severing either parent is like severing a limb on a child. It's not that the child can't then go on to thrive, but it's a permanent injury. It really is. Either parent. The best case scenario is usually, like if there's a widowhood or something. Those kids recover bestest, but really, it's always a huge injury. And now we have a generation raised without them, and raised kind of instinctively to either resent their absent fathers or fear their absent fathers. And the psychology of things like this Gillette ad actually plays into that. That's what I would say is a big part of what is going on, especially because a lot of these young men in particular they have this instinctive need to virtue signal. To prove they are worthy as men, and the only thing they can think of is their willingness to protect and defend women. So they'll even jump up and start protecting and defending women who don't need it, or worse, who don't deserve it. And a certain type of psychotic woman, it doesn't have to be a majority at all. Only a certain type of psychotic woman takes full advantage of that. Am I making sense there?
Yes. I mean, that's like the basis of proxy violence when you get right down to it. So Yeah, especially those kinds of women on an impressionable guy that's, insecure, impressionable.
Wait, when you talk about proxy violence, could you go into detail? Because that sounds very similar to what the Gillette ad was actually advocating.
Yeah, let me give a brief. It is what it says it is when you have someone do violence on your behalf. So if I hire a hitman to shoot you, I've committed an act of proxy violence. And proxy violence is actually a superpower that every girl is born with.
Yes.
You know, that's actually very scary. That's actually very scary because, and Louis Laveau points this out in the Gillette ad. If you notice towards the end of it, what the Gillette ad advocates is physically restraining people who do not conform to progressive orthodoxy. If you notice, like for instance, the guy who's about to catcall, he gets
Yes, you're right.
he gets pushed against the wall. The boys who are roughhousing, they get forcibly separated. We don't even know if that man is even their father. But then the boys that are roughhousing in the street, they get forcibly separated.
Boys roughhousing is pathological on its own.
Yeah, I know. And hey, here's the kicker though. Where do you think football comes from? And Gillette owns a big stadium, big football stadium. I think they might be playing the Super Bowl there this year.
So Gillette, this company that basically
is chastising men,
is basically funding one of the and making a profit out of one of the most violent
millions.
Making millions off of a very violent game. Yeah, and I don't want to get football fans. We're not attacking you, okay? We're not. And by the way, it is a myth. Oh, and by the way, it is a total myth that there are a record number of wife beatings on Super Bowl Sunday. That comes around every few years. Nobody's saying that, Mr. Football fan. So calm down. You can go back and watch your Packers game or whoever you like, right?
No,
I'm just saying. But it is a violent sport that teaches violence.
Yeah,
well, and it's very ironic, you know.
With the pros, it's excessively violent. I mean, it's incredibly violent the farther you work your way up into the pros. Because I knew somebody from high school that went on a scholarship to play in college and had to drop out in a couple of years because it's just
brutal. Oh yeah, nobody gets out of the NFL.
So it's a violent game. And now think about it. As a masculist, I don't mind pointing out that there's women, lining up and shaking their butts at the side of the, at the sidelines there, like, go fight, win, bucko, all this could be yours. So, and who's inspiring guys to the violence, if you look at it that way? That's why it's all their fault. I mean, if women would only stop shaking their asses at violent guys, there'd be no more violence in the world.
Yeah, and Gillette.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and Gillette, it's in this case, it's not women shaking their ass, it's feminists lecturing men, but it's basically the same thing. I bet you that some feminist decided, hey, we're going to lecture men, and so she decided, or he decided because of a she, that they're going to put in this ad lecturing men on behalf of women.
Yeah, and so fair's fair. Well, see, some social justice lefties are going to go acting like we're serious, but I mean, there is some real nugget of truth here. Hardcore, really. Okay, so let's look at every single case where women have cheered on or encouraged violence, or said they found violence sexy, or called a boy a sissy, whatever. What?
That's the other thing. I mean, they've done those tests on ovulation. They're trying to debunk them now, whatever that means. Debunk. It's like you have to be bunked before you can be debunked. But those tests that they did on women, what they found attractive in men's faces when they were going through different phases of ovulation, and when they were at the peak of ovulation, they wanted a macho guy. You know, they wanted, like the face that's in the page that we have up there over on Discord. That's on the APA article. You know, when they want that solid looking face, but the way they changed it was real subtle, so you could hardly tell. But you know, that's how they picked it up, going from, you know, one phase through the other. So yeah, it's like there is a biological component. I mean, when you look at other mammals, mountain goats and lowland gorillas, they do the same thing. I mean, mountain goats, you see them bashing their heads into each other, and the female, there he is right there. You know, the females are all kind of lining up along the side of them, you know, and the last goat standing is, you know, the one they're all vying for. Literally.
This bleeds right into this bleeds right into the other topic, which is the American Psychological Association has just started putting out feminist ideology, feminist propaganda.
Yes.
By the way, while this is probably another show, we also know that there's a move within the American Psychological Association to simply declare all religious people delusional, and to declare teaching religion to your children to be child abuse. And there are psychologists on sites like Psychology Today already talking like that. In other words, these people seek the power to define reality itself.
Yes.
And to tell you what you're allowed to think and what you believe. And they think that this is what the psychological profession is for.
They are part of the destruction of the family too. I swear, I think they're, you know, like a, you know, wing of the CIA. When I heard that they were working with the CIA and the FBI on the fine line between what's torture and what isn't, I just thought, okay, my red flags went up. I mean, with Gloria Steinem, you know, boldly saying, you know, and proudly saying that they were financed by the CIA, and boy, those guys, she had no idea they were so open-minded. Well,
and let's look at this. We're not kidding. Here's one from Dr. Christine Smith, PhD. Welcome to Feminist Psychology. How I became a feminist psychologist, and you can too.
That's
terrifying. You're just
I know.
admitting. Well, I'll tell you what. You know, I mean, maybe if we can have listings for Christian psychologists and Muslim psychologists and atheist psychologists and feminist psychologists, that's okay. But now you're going to claim your ideology is and a feminist psychologist is going to do two things. One, she's going to quote unquote empower her clients by feeding a grievance and victim narrative and teaching them that, to use the system to hurt men to their own advantage, but which long term will only make the women miserable, and cause, family devastation and loneliness. A lot of these women listen to these psychologists, these feminists' advice, and then they hit their 40s or 50s, and all of a sudden they're nearly suicidal and alone and feeding their cats.
Yeah, well,
and wondering what happened.
Buckley put up that other article. It's written by a woman. It's earlier on over there, right here on Discord. And she's basically saying, the APA is more difficult to maintain a marriage, basically.
This was the one in the Washington Examiner. Let me see.
The Washington Examiner. That's the one.
I had the link up. Let me go ahead and find it, because the Washington
there. But these link all of these because they're really good.
Well, it's definitely in the low bar down below if anybody's looking for it.
You know, the term.
Well, I can actually screen share it on my computer.
Go right ahead. I have it here. I believe this one here by Douglas Ernst API Guidelines.
No, it's this one. The American Psychological Association just made it harder to maintain strong marriages by Suzanne.
That's the one.
It's for whatever reason you're not displaying, but I'll try and get that into the low bar later.
Whoa. Oh, wait, hold on.
I just saw it. Yeah, that's a great article.
This is the article, I believe. Can you see, guys? Can you guys see?
I can. Yes. Okay.
So, apparently, she says here, I'm finishing up a manuscript for my new book that helps women find Mr. Right and keep him by embracing sexual inequality, aka the innate differences between men and women. So-called gender equality presumes sexes are interchangeable, and they are not. Masculinity and femininity represent the yin and yang of any romantic relationship and are crucial for lasting love. When they cease to exist, children suffer and families disintegrate. So you can imagine my shock and disdain for the American Psychological Association's new guidelines that claim traditional masculinity is harmful. We've known about the war on men for years, but to have the largest scientific and professional organization of psychologists in the country formally reject the inherent nature of men is both profound and appalling. The APA guidelines understandably triggered a huge backlash. They emphasized such absurd ideas as gender role strain, defined as, quote, a psychological situation in which gender role demands have negative consequences on the individual or others, and gender role conflict, defined as problems resulting from adherence to rigid, sexist, or restrictive gender roles learned from socialization that result in personal restriction, devaluation, or violation of others or others' self. And she goes on to continue, as a result, the Society for the Psychological Study of Men and Masculinities of the American Psychological Association issued a rebuttal to its own guidelines in an effort to appease the masses. It reads, when we report that some aspects of traditional masculinity are potentially harmful, we are referring to a belief system held by a few that associates masculinity with extreme behaviors that harm self and others. It is the extreme stereotypical behaviors, not simply being male or a traditional male, that may result in negative outcomes, blah, 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 blah. And she says, sorry, APA, you can't backtrack on your own report by suggesting you were only referring to outliers. Your missive, which you concede was years in the making, is about men and masculinity in general. Yes, and
yeah, that's the thing. That's the line that everybody's been selling so big time just recently between the APA and now this with Gillette.
Yeah, they're lying. They're lying. Go, we get in the low bar. Go look at the actual APA guidelines for psychological practice with boys and men. No, they are not talking about a tiny percentage of men. They are talking about all of these social factors which make a tiny percentage of men do these things. But they think, all men have to change.
Because it's a pervasive social ill that everybody must be concerned with. And it's like, no. That's the same as saying, yes, it's a major social ill that some women kill children. Some women burn kids with cigarettes. You could get into the gruesome facts.
Yeah.
Well, you could say that our society, in their complacency, tacitly condones it. That's what the matriarchy is all about. It's all passive aggressive. That's just the way women are, and they have to change, and that's why the masculists are here to change them.
That's right. We're here to reprogram you, ladies, and tell you how to be a woman properly. We're here to tell you how to woman properly, ladies. Because
a bunch of neckbeards on the internet here to tell women how to behave.
You're okay, but you're flawed, and here's how we're gonna fix you.
We really love you, so we're going to need you to stop doing certain things.
Exactly. Killing kids. And I'm serious about that. Let's use this to make that an issue, because it's not toxic masculinity that makes guys grow up bad. It's having a bad parent or two, or being in a very bad situation. Everybody knows that. These shrinks, who the hell do they think they are? They know that. What are they, what are they covering?
Well, apparently they believe that guess what they list as the evil behaviors, that like pathological behaviors that men partake in. Take a wild guess.
Stoicism was one of them.
The other ones are aggressiveness.
Yes, that's it.
Breadwinning.
Competition.
Dominance. Breadwinning.
Yes. Breadwinning.
Yeah. Apparently, working to better your family is a pathological trait, according to the APA.
And let's not kid ourselves. Psychologists armed with this ideology will make their way into your children's school.
Oh, they're there already.
They will make their way. They are already there big time in the court system, both the criminal courts and the family courts and the civil courts, so that they can simply, whatever's wrong with you, if they don't like you politically or whatever, they just diagnose you with a mental illness, force you to go to see a psychologist or psychiatrist, might even order you onto drugs. And this is all happening in American courts now.
Yeah, and with kids, especially with the drugs, young boys are getting drugs, and it's a female world of psychology. It's 70% women and growing. I mean, and where's their big concern? Like for STEM, we got to have more women in STEM. Well, why don't they, have the same concern for what's going on in psychology? Because that's got to be a part of this bullshit with the APA, is the fact that there's so many feminists in psychology just for the fact that there's so many women in psychology. So that's what I'm saying. Now is a chance to, really, really be confrontational with these women in psychology about child abuse. What's their response? Put them on the defensive, and they've got it coming. Come on, I'm sick of this. Kids are not of anybody's concern in this country until there's families separated at the border, or they can make a big TV splash. Even that one kid, God, it was some war-torn thing where, I mean, it's set up where you think, oh my God, this is in the street someplace, this poor kid, and somebody snuck out a video that it was all in a studio. They panned back, it was the same little boy in the same scene with the same background in the same clothes, and as his cell phone, it looked like, panned back, it was in a studio, and it couldn't have been faked. I mean, the video couldn't have been faked. I mean, it was a documentation of the real faking of that ad. So it's literally like wag the dog.
Now, some people are saying that this is all a good sign, that it's some sort of watershed moment, because there's a ton of conservatives reacting against it, and others. And, if you do go on YouTube to see the video here, you'll see it's got way more downvotes than upvotes.
Oh, yeah.
And it's even plausible that a lot of those upvotes are fake, because we know that YouTube plays those kinds of games. But I don't think that's the issue anyway, because they want the controversy. Notice how if we go to CNN here, CNN, of course, is siding with both Gillette and the American Psychological Association.
Yes.
And this is meant to, it doesn't have to convince everybody. It just has to polarize people, especially the mushy middle types who will say, well, the message is too extreme, but really men should do more.
Yeah,
and it's missing the whole issue. It's missing the whole issue.
Men do all the bad stuff.
Right, and now it's like, well, no, we just do most of the bad stuff. That would be the middle part, as opposed to saying women do half the bad stuff. Thank you.
Yeah,
and are fully responsible adults who are completely part of shaping this society and always have been.
No, that's where, as a masculinist, I disagree. They're not fully responsible, and I think they need to man up about child abuse, because they're not responsible. That's the problem. There's no level of consequence for the issue of child abuse. So, you can't bring up the issue and look in a woman's face and see if there's guilt there or not.
It is actually hideous, because it's true. All of these messages on child abuse would be helpful if they were targeted appropriately, which would not be exclusively to men or women, but really, seriously, data going back to the 70s, unchanged, except maybe to get worse. Women commit most child abuse by far.
It's been getting worse by 25% since the 70s.
Yeah, well, that would be the influence of feminism and the Duluth model, which is fake, phony science. And it drives me crazy, because I see Christians all the time being fooled by stuff like this. There's a whole, and I'm going to need to put this in some of the Christian men's rights sites I'm in, and groups I'm in, and a few of those. It's like, seriously, Christians, you need to stop following the feminist Kool-Aid. Women are sinners. Women have always been sinners. Yes, you as a man could always do a better job as a man. Yes, you could. Every man listening, you could be doing a better job as a man. on any number of issues. And every woman, let me finish, man. And every woman listening should be able to be a better person too. It's not, and Christians lose that, and that's a sin, by the way. That type of sexism is a sin. The sin, or the heresy, even, if you will, if I go religious, the idea that women are less sinful and less responsible. BS.
It's a lie of omission.
Yes.
It's a lie of omission. Evil prevails when good men do nothing. And, well, where are the women on this one? Because this is their evil. I was talking to you earlier, Dean, about women's moral consequence in life. And women really are held up as the moral judges. And like I was saying before, it's like the bell curve. Men are the smartest and men are the dumbest. And I think the same goes for moral capacity with women. I think they are morally superior to men in a lot of ways. But at the opposite end of that polarity, they're just as evil as can be. When you start looking at how bad child abuse can be, women that have babies just to sell them, women that knowingly sell their kids into prostitution.
There's women who knowingly, take part in satanic rituals to kill their own children. It's the truth. It's the truth. I'm not making that up, by the way. That happens.
People don't know how bad it gets, but when you look at just run-of-the-mill child abuse, just the hitting and burning with cigarettes for some reason, comes up a lot. And yeah, women torture kids to death. One of the reasons I got back on this hiatus, and specifically, centered on child abuse, was not just the big operation that almost killed me, or the botched surgeries, but the Demon Reed murder. That this poor woman was tortured to death, and it just disappeared in the media. And I wanted to watch something about it. I turned on the TV that morning, and it was Jane Fonda and Eve Ensler talking about the 10th anniversary of the freaking vagina monologues. And that was when Jane Fonda dropped the C-bomb on Good Morning America or whatever.
So let's go back and explore an idea you were saying earlier, because I find this provocative and worth visiting. You might even like this, Gio Khan. Everybody who has bothered looking has known that for a while now. Even Jordan Peterson and others have shown this. There's this bell curve on IQ with men and women, and men and women essentially have the same average IQ, but women cluster close to the center. So you find more women with average IQs than not. Basically, they're more likely to have a very average center of the road, roughly 100, a little over 100 IQ, or a little below.
It's like they go from very smart to not very smart.
Well, and the point is, women are like that. They all right in the middle of. They tend to so extremely intelligent women are hard to come by, and extremely really stupid women are also really hard to come by. Yep. Most women are somewhere in the middle, and Jim just made a point that there may be something called a moral quotient or a moral IQ or whatever, and he may have a point there that. I'm not sure I buy it, but women do have an innate moral sense, and socially we tend to give women the right to make moral decisions. Like when a woman condemns something, morally, men usually move. I think it usually comes right from childhood.
We give them moral deference, and that's why all of this stuff has worked. All of this stuff is women taking the high road to such an extent that they can just bitch about mansplaining and manspreading,
And so you may also have a lower number of women saints, but the women saints who are there are very saintly, and you may have a lower number of really psychotically evil women, but when they're evil, they're really, really, really evil.
Dean, I'm saying you have more of them. I'm saying you have more really, really, just like you have more men that are on the high end of intelligence, more men that are on the lower end of intelligence. Yeah, on the moral code, because women have been getting away with anything with children.
Well, that last part is true. With the influence of feminism,
no one's really contested and made an issue of maternal child abuse that I can recollect. and all the
Well,
great
you have the
religious
ancient tale.
documents.
You have the ancient tale of Medea. You have Cinderella, which was the story of the wicked stepmothers and stepsisters. You do have.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
But I would say that, yeah, the first wave feminists were the ones who they had a sort of a Victorian era attitude about women being these pure creatures, and that's where this came from, the Victorian era, and a lot of conservatives in the modern day also have this Victorian era attitude about women being these pure creatures, and that's where feminism came from. This
That,
attitude.
that's a,
That's what the entire argument for women getting the vote was that women were so pure and good-minded that if you gave them the vote, we would basically live in a utopia because they would do everything right.
well, their moral superiority is what made booze illegal.
Yeah, and I mean it. The religious audience. Oh, yeah. In fact, let's remember this. In the United States, women got the vote on the 19th Amendment, which that's what gave them the vote. But the amendment before that, i.e., before they were granted the universal right to vote, women passed the 18th Amendment. It was it was women who
When I said
demanded.
religious superiority, I meant their moral superiority. That's how
Yeah,
they passed the booze law.
yeah, they guilted men into doing it.
Yes, that's how they've
Literally
done.
how it happened.
That's how child custody laws started changing back at Seneca Falls, way back then. It's all been this moral superiority high horse that they've been on for a long time, and I think they need to, go kick the horse out from underneath them.
Buckley,
They want to be on equal grounds. Well, that would do it.
well, Buckley, question: who was that author that you spoke of? He goes by the Bad Catholic.
Yeah, John Zmirak. He once wrote a book. I think I might have the book on my shelf if you let me go get it. Go get it.
I guess it doesn't matter. I was just, weren't you saying that there? I
Yeah,
remember mentioning in that he mentioned how from a traditional Christian perspective, the idea that women are these light, delicate things who only sin because men make them sin is just what? Have you ever met a woman? Have you ever known a woman? Have you ever talked to one?
Yeah. Well,
have you heard one give confession? That was from a priest.
That's the feminist line when you read anything that has anything to do with domestic violence. If the women are violent, they always put a caveat on there, but many times they're responding to, defending themselves against violence or responding to violence. So that's their excuse. And usually that's just the opposite. Again, that's projection, because usually it's the woman that hits the guy first, and then the guy decks the woman.
It's all kinds of stuff. It's all kinds of stuff.
There's no call for that, but I mean, that's the thing. It's yelling going back and forth. That's in the midst of a heated fight. It's not this stereotype. The guy comes in drunk and starts hitting the wife and kids. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen, but by and large, your run-of-the-mill domestic violence call the cops get, they don't know what the hell to do. There was both yelling and screaming.
Yeah, and I guess this is just the thing we've got to do, and I'm going to keep emphasizing it. People, we need to, and this is why I actually think that the Gillette thing is so toxic, because a certain number of sensible people, even conservative people, religious people, will just buy this and say, yes, we as men need to do more. We as men need to do more.
That's the remarkable thing. I don't think they are, and I think that they're actually motivated, because like I said, the response, this is one of the rare times in my mailbox I get blocks of replies from YouTube messages, because I was just cutting and pasting my list of Procter & Gamble companies and getting these fantastic responses from people, about what a soldier, against the tyranny of the SJWs I am. And thank you. They're going to stop using these products, but just blocks, reply on all these different.
See, here's the thing. You might be right in that I mean, one of the reasons the conservatives often disgust me is they simply will not confront evil coming out of women. But I would have to say, with the Daily Wire and the Washington Times and others, coming out strong against this. Maybe this is conservatives finally standing up and saying we've had enough.
Yes, I am. That's what I mean. I feel so charged by this right now because I've been doing this a long time, going back to that Oprah show. And yeah, I would like to ask Oprah, hey, why did you stop including men on your shows for sexual abuse for 20 years? That's a fucking long time, Oprah. What happened? You know, was that a
yeah, people don't know, but people don't know, but back
as long as the Me Too people can go back 20, 30 years, yeah, I'm going to go back to 1987. That was a big deal to us getting on the fucking Oprah show to talk about men.
Let me just explain to the audience what you're talking about. More than 20 years ago, back when Oprah Winfrey had, you know, tens of millions of watchers every day, they did one famous show talking about male victims and female perpetrators. And it was a pretty good show, and then it's very hard to find now. It had a huge response, but they never did it again, and she's still never done it. Instead, she hangs out in Hollywood and continues to push the feminist party line, and hangs out with disgusting creeps like Harvey Weinstein.
Yes, sticking her tongue in his ear. But that's not quite right, Dean. We were in 1987. We did a show for men that were sexually abused. Most of us have been abused by other men. There was a woman with our group that was abused by her mother. And there was another guy that was going to be there that had been abused by his mother, but he chickened out, so he didn't make it that morning. And then she did the 200-man show like 23 years later and made a big deal about it. And she was up there with Tyler Perry and had a 2-part show for men, you know, and literally said men were finally ready to come forward and talk to her about child abuse. And it's like, wait a minute, we were right there from the get-go, you know. So I remember things about Oprah. If we're going to go back that far, you've heard the term all men are potential rapists, right?
That's an old feminist line. Yeah,
all feminists though try to deny that any feminist ever said that, and they'll go back to that book where she says something like all men are rapists, that's all they are. But nobody ever said all men are potential rapists. Like hell, Oprah Winfrey did way back then before I was on that show. I remember her doing an Oprah moment, and she had, what's her name? That did this, Susan Brown Miller, that did the rape book way back when, and she was saying that over and over. Susan Brown Miller, oh well, all men are potential rapists. Oh no, what I found is all men are potential. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm having like a big moment, you know, where she stops the camera and it pans in on her. All men are potential rapists. I think that's, you know, that was like a breakthrough moment she used to have. Like, I call them orgasms.
Yeah, you're talking about this book, Against Our Will, Men, Women, and Rape, a 1975 book. My old friend Erin Pitsey knew Susan Brown Miller, says she was fundamentally crazy. But Brown Miller, yeah, she kind of opened up in 1975, she's kind of opened up the contemporary feminist narrative on rape, about how men just rape and there's a serious problem with women getting raped. And it was all rape all the time. And she even went so far as to say all men, a conscious process of intimidation by which all men keep all women in a state of fear.
Yep.
That's what she thinks rape is.
Yep.
A conscious process of intimidation by which all men keep all women in a state of fear. And there'll be feminists who deny thinking that or saying that, or just saying, well, that's just over the top. No, it's pretty much what they think.
It's ingrained in feminism. When, like I said, when you have Oprah sitting there filling the screen with her face saying, did you get that? You know, I'm having, that's a breakthrough moment. So
one of the things is
Brown Miller. I called Susan Brown Miller. I got a hold of her through her editor. And
I'd love to interview her. I'd love to interview her.
Oh, this was a long time ago, and I was just calling because I was this kid saying, "Hey, man, I saw that show. You can't talk that way. You know, you can't say that. You know, that's ridiculous. That's like saying all women are potential whores."
Well, what this is, and it's funny, if you go into the psychological profession, if you go out into the psychological profession, especially 50 years ago, because the American Psychological Association has changed. Like they've just, they're currently on their DSM-5, their Diagnostics and Standards Manual 5. Go back to the other DSM-1 or the DSM-2, and you will discover a condition called androphobia, very well described as women who are always thinking men are going to rape them, always thinking men are going to come after them, always thinking they have to defend themselves from men. So, androphobia. And you might find it somewhere in the literature now, but you'll have to look because feminists have more or less erased this as a psychological condition. But I mean, for many, many decades, and really I would guess for thousands of years, everybody has known there's certain type of squirrely women who are just terrified of men.
Yes.
How they develop it is one thing or another. And feminism, especially back in these days, seems to be all about taking women who are really psychologically damaged and putting them on stage. And that's kind of what this case is with Susan Brown Miller, who was made a hero. And then, of course, she was dumped by feminists after that for having the wrong opinions, because they always eat each other. One of the things about being a feminist is being a feminist means you never have to actually stick with anything you've said or any opinion you ever had. So they can just either deny Susan Brown Miller ever said anything like this, or they can just say, well, she was never a real feminist, or whatever. She was from 50 years ago. We don't care.
Kind of like they've disclaimed Germaine Greer now. Oh no, she's not a feminist. Not anymore.
Yeah, it's like if you're not into the new trends of feminism, the new intersectionality, you're a heretic from the religion of feminism.
Well, she had the nerve to say that trans men weren't real women.
Well, as soon as she had that, oh no, she's a trans exclusionary round femme. Oh, okay. Well, this is because feminism has never been a coherent ideology. It still isn't one. It's a very postmodernist garbage, and it is all male bashing. And it always has been all male bashing all the time. By the way, I just have to mention it. Somebody used the phrase first wave feminism. There was never any first wave, just so people know. That is a myth. It's sort of like the Enlightenment.
Yeah,
but it's even more of a myth. It's even more of a myth than the Enlightenment.
To me, all it does is kind of put a framework on it, but there was never any conclusive. Feminism really came about in the 60s as militant feminism. I mean, it was...
Yeah, it really did. In fact, what they did, even though you can say bad things about the suffragists, and by the way, there's a lot of dirty laundry on the suffragists. And the women suffragists who, threw a lot of men under the bus because they only wanted the vote for rich white women. Or the classic to me will always be the way when they passed the 19th Amendment, women who, the white suffragettes threw the black suffragettes under the bus. So they used the black suffragettes to help pass the 19th Amendment, but then many of them were supportive of taking the vote away, of not letting black people have the vote. I mean, there's bad history on the suffragists, but at the same time, they would have never had anything to do with the feminists. They never had anything to do with the feminists. Feminism was created more or less in the 60s. You can find some early stuff from like Simone de Beauvoir and stuff like that, but it's really a 1960s and especially 1970s phenomenon.
At least
it really is
popularized because we did have the feminine mystique with Betty Friedan.
Betty Friedan and Simone de Beauvoir. By the way, notice all these names. We're mentioning all these classic names: Gloria Steinem, Brown Miller, de Beauvoir. I can name a whole lot of obscure ones like Firestone and quite a few others. And you look through all these women, they all had broken relationships. They were all abused as children. They had terrible relationships with fathers or no fathers. And they were all obviously psychologically damaged, and they all put their psychological damage on men.
All men.
All men.
Yes,
that's right, including all the men in their lives. And this pattern continues to this day.
That's
let Buckley talk. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Buckley?
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, you see this over and over again in atheist circles and leftist circles and feminist circles. This entire pattern of basically people from broken families who come out of that situation with a warped view of the world, and they seem to think that, well, everyone's basically like me, and they act on that essentially. And it's no wonder that they're revolutionaries if they think the world is as broken and damaged as their childhood was.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like they want to make the world as damaged as their childhood was sometimes. I mean, I really see that. I even see that in the feminists in their 20s and 30s, including the male feminists. They've got a rage at the entire male sex. And I think a whole lot of them are simply bitter at their missing or abusive or very weak fathers. And it's scary to me, though, because these are people in their 20s and 30s, and they're, tens of millions of them.
And I hate to include sexually abusive fathers too, because that.
Well, that's part of it.
If Absolutely. You look at that's the thing, and that's why women focus on sexual abuse, because that is the one form of child abuse that men perpetrate more than women.
Yes, it is true that men
really look at the statistics, so it's not that much more. And again, women and fathers and mothers will molest their own kids. That's bizarre, but yeah, the things like that happen.
I put a link to it in the low bar. You can look into it. Domesticviolenceresearch.org. Anybody is curious, or look for a book by Philip W. Cook called "When Women Sexually Abuse Men." When it comes to violence towards children, the only area where men are more likely to be perpetrators than women is sexual violence.
Yep.
But not that much more likely. And in a majority of cases of sexual violence or sexual molestation or violence to children, in a majority of cases, a woman is directly involved. And let's not play the feminist game and say, well, she was brought along by that big, brutal man. Yes. No, that's not the case in most cases. And women are to be found in a majority of sex trafficking cases. There are women involved colluding, coordinating, and covering up if they are not actively participating.
Yes.
And so once again, conservatives need to hear this. Christians, Jews, anybody else of any religious persuasion needs to hear this. Stop thinking women are dainty fairies.
And you know how ingrained that is. How ingrained that is when you look at sugar and spice and everything nice. That literally is what we're taught as children.
Yeah, little girls. I don't know if young girls hear that one anymore. Young girls
might not. Yeah, I guess maybe I'm a little old.
Yeah, we used to say that. Sugar and spice, but what?
Well, I heard that when I was a little kid, and I was born in '96. So
okay, so maybe it's still around.
There you go.
Boys are made of snips and snails.
Yeah. It just doesn't go away. So I find that to be very chauvinette, man. That's part of the matriarchy right there.
That's right.
Teach the little kids, brainwashing little boys to think that they're not enough from that age. And girls are so perfect. Girls are your moral superiors. That's what they teach us. That's how evil they are. That's passive aggressive.
Let me just point out that the old phrase is girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice, and boys are made of snakes and snails and puppy dog tails. But what they're really referring to in that ancient ways was the way boys are just fun and they like to get into stuff. And it wasn't meant to be rude. It's just they love being outdoors and playing with snakes and bugs and playing with puppies and stuff like that.
Yes,
it was about boys roughhousing originally, but yeah, it's kind of transmuted into this idea that boys are icky and girls are wonderful, and that's too bad. Well, I think we've rambled enough, but I think we've made our points. Did you have any final thoughts you wanted to get out, Jim?
Yeah, just that I think that we are at a turning point because of what's been happening over the past month now. It's like there's really been an uptick in insanity, and the responses that I've been seeing from people are pretty profound, and it really has gotten so far out of line with drag kids. That would be a show in and of itself, because that is very much like Bakubazi. Deeply serious, and when you link those two together, you can see how deeply sick it is. And again, start hitting them where it hurts through the pocketbook. Look up what products they sell and don't buy them. Maybe even drop them a line and tell them you're not going to be buying them. And yeah, we know what companies you own. They're Procter and Gamble, and we're going to not buy any more products. I'm sick of hearing about, the Brawny Girl, and what was the other one they did for another one of their products? All the Dove, the Dove be in tune with your body. All these liberal things, but this pushed it too far. And the response has been overwhelming. They had to do a rebuttal right off the bat. And I just say keep pushing. Be assertive. Be assertive. And
be assertive in real life too.
Yep.
I think that's actually what matters more.
Yep.
I will say even above the boycott, simply being loud about it, if you possibly can be in your community, in your job, wherever you are. If you've got the guts, if you're not going to lose your job, if you think you see an opportunity, speak up and say, I'm sick of hearing it. Women have a violence problem too, and a big one, because they do. Now, final thoughts, Mr. Buckley, Mr. Geocon. Did you have any final thoughts you wanted to get out, sir?
Yes, I do. I would like to say that on the child abuse thing, I have talked to a young feminist by the name of Ray Murasame, who has said in the past that she believed that there wasn't, that all violence was like a male problem, and I immediately thought of this because this is the attitude all these people have been indoctrinated in, and the second thing I have on my mind is the whole transgender kid thing. I don't think that I mean the drag queen kids. I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. I think the left is going to keep pushing that, keep accelerating until they run off a cliff, and they'll have to it'll get to the point where there's going to be some sort of institutional overthrow, basically, where we're going to have to start taking all of these Hollywood types that are pushing this child abuse nonsense, and we'll have to handle them through. They might just be liable for like a criminal offense.
Well,
I mean,
we are wrapping up, Jim. We're wrapping up.
Opportunist malnurturing. If you go back to that list of stuff that I've got, that's why I wrote that law. It's malnurturing. I mean, there should be laws against that.
We should really do it. We should really do a string together or some other time, and maybe you could have on Devin Stack from Black Pill, and I'm sure he would be very interested in stuff like that.
I wonder if Devin Stack would even believe the stuff we're saying about women here. So many conservative religious men, which he's one of both, just are totally blind on this. And it's how a lot of the abuse was snuck in. But it is time to close it up. I'm going to suggest maybe we'll do another show in the near future about the child drag queen and the fact that we are normalizing child rape. That's definitely something that's happening, and it's something that ought to disturb absolutely everybody. All right, everybody, listen, we're going to close it up now. We've hit our hour. Do be sure to visit the links in the low bar. A really good one if anybody has questions about domestic violence and men versus women's violence. Check the Partner Abuse Data Knowledge Project, domesticviolenceresearch.com. It's not just domestic violence, because it includes all forms of child abuse in there and quite a bit more. Get to know about women's violence. It matters just as much as men's violence does. And it's not a men's problem, it's everybody's problem.
Child abuse, women's violence against children, because that's what's the most denied. And that's true. That's the biggest impact, As soon as you say you're going to get a blank, I'm sorry for barging in, but you're going to get a blank if you try to say violence against women or violent, because they imply that it's against men. So you have to say violence against children, women's violence against children. Put it into words.
Violence against children. Yeah, maybe we should have a whole show called that. Women's violence against children.
Because that's
all right, Jim. I'm trying to shut down now. Okay, brother. So everybody, please Join us on redpillreligion.com. We will look into doing a show in the future on these other issues. And please visit us on redpillreligion.com, where we're there every day. Drop something in the show note, into the tip jar if you would. We'd appreciate that. Please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. Please tell your friends or enemies about us. Please notice we're on the new channel, so we're trying to grow it. Help us get this growing. We're new program, new channel, and new attitude. So God bless everybody.